That there are many aspects of virtualization, and in software we tend to abstract and virtualize at multiple layers. If you think about, when we did networking, we virtualized a disk by intercepting calls to a hard drive and then remoting them somewhere else with what we call the redirector. Today, when you address an endpoint of a database, you specify a physical server name, server instance, and a database name. How can we make that be more logical such that I have a virtual database name that I connect to, and I don't really care where it lands in the topology, such that when I talked about dynamically moving resources, you can look at it in one way. The mechanisms, we think about the separation of mechanism and policy. I need a mechanism to move resources. Can I take a workload and move it from this server to another in a virtualized environment? That's one step. But I think the next step is how can I write a policy to do that in an automated fashion, such that in response to writing an SLA, I say, I'm not meeting my SLA, the policy in the automation is going to tell me I'm going to start up additional instances, or I'm going to move this database from here to here. And because I've virtualized the endpoint, I don't need to be aware or change anything when the database moves from one place to another. So that's sort of what getting at right there. My point being is that we talk about virtualization, but it's about much, much more than just saying a virtualized server. And we're attacking it. You can say virtualization of presentation. So terminal services is about that. And so I think you have to keep in mind sort of the big picture. Today, people, I think, develop database applications with kind of where it's going to land in mind. And I think what we're going to do is get to a point where we will develop the application, we'll have a logical description of its topology, and then at deployment time, I will say, look, I'm either going to deploy it right here on my desktop, I'm going to go deploy this thing on my server, I'm going to deploy it in some large-scale database grid in my enterprise, or I might even deploy it up into the cloud. And if we build the right mechanism for describing what it is, and we build the right virtualization infrastructure, we can defer that decision until deployment time and then bring it up any one of those places. And we could move it from one place to another as our business needs change. Actually, you'll see the first steps in the policy-based management in the products we just announced the other day, this week. So SQL Server 2008 has policy-based management, and in Windows Server in the virtualization space, we've got a lot of policy-based management happening there as well. The data model stuff I talked about is in SQL Server 2008 as well. Sort of the magic around writing the policies against data, that'll probably happen in the next release.
Of SQL Server.
Of SQL Server.